Hey everyone, it's Jacqueline. I thought it was about time I made an update. I hope it's a happy new year for everybody out there. And yeah, life's been pretty good. I hope everyone's well. My last video seemed to get, some interesting feedback because I think it's because I mentioned J.K. Rowling in the title, and it seems to have triggered a lot of people that really just have issues with just trans people in general. And, we're at a time where you have all these, with sports, with trans people and so on and so forth, and how they feel it's unfair to have trans people compete in the gender that they choose and so on and so forth. But, a lot of times I feel like people don't seem to understand how the hormones affect our body and muscle development and strength and so on and so forth. I mean, sure, you have your core bone structure, and that's about it. Like, you have your bone structure of your body, but there's a reason why after a certain amount of time on hormone therapy that it is okay to be in sports with the gender that you are that you've transitioned to be. And so, for example, like, I've been on estrogen for now, was it 2008? So yeah, 12 years. 12 years I've been on estrogen. I would say that I really started transitioning probably 15 years ago is when I started realizing that this is what was happening, and then, and I was fighting it about 15 years ago. And so when it comes to sports, I work out a lot. I do up to 6 days a week. I'm back on my super hardcore workout regimen, and and lifting weights and so on and so forth. And I work out with a lot of when I'm at the gym, there's a lot of guys there. There's a lot of power lifters. There's a lot of people like that. And to be honest, once you're on estrogen for a certain amount of time, your body just changes. Literally, muscle melts away when you have estrogen in your system. And so it's very difficult to maintain that strength and whatnot. And women have a very difficult, men have a difficult time with estrogen being in their system. That's why they always recommend to not have, eat foods that are high in estrogen, like tofu and stuff like that. Not that that's going to make any difference, but still, they recommend to stay away from foods that have a lot of estrogen in them. Chickpeas, I think, are one of them. And it's not going to make that big of a difference, especially for trans people on hormone therapy. It's like, if you're on hormone therapy, that's when you're going to get results. If you're eating chickpeas and tofu, it's really not going to do it. But so all these fitness things always warn men, get your hormones checked. Get your hormones checked, because you won't be able to have the strength or sustainability to be able to do certain things because you have estrogen in your system. So the same people tend to be the ones that believe that. But when it comes to a trans person, you now are the gender you're born with, the sex that you're born with, And so, for example, like for me, if I had to compete against men, I would absolutely lose. It doesn't matter if I work out 7 days a week, lifting, like powerlifting and all this stuff. I'm probably not gonna have the same strength as someone else doing the same amount of time. And that's just because what estrogen does to the body. Now, of course, if you're doing testosterone replacement and steroids and stuff like that, women do it and they get pretty buff, or they go through menopause, and their hormones fluctuate, and so they're able to gain muscle and strength. But everybody always talks about trans women competing against other women and whatnot. But there's also trans men that compete, and one person, this is actually a while ago, had made a post like, when trans men start killing it in sports, then I'll start to listen, and then I'll agree with you about trans, people being in sports and all that shit. Anyway, so yeah, sure enough, I replied with an article about a trans boxer, a trans male boxer that won in professional boxing against a cis man that I think the guy he was competing against was really big and really good, and he still beat him, and he was a trans man. But no one ever talks about when when people actually lose as trans people. They only talk about when they win because they see it as like an unfair advantage. Now, as far as like strength goes, like appearance-wise, I appear like I have a lot more strength than I do, because I can go work out in the gym and I look like I've, but my strength is really not as strong as it would be if I didn't transition. And So yeah, I find the sports thing quite an interesting subject. And of course, in Tennessee, which is where I live, they're proposing a law that's going to force people to compete in the sports that they were born with, the gender they were born with, which is kind of comical because I actually really can't wait to see all these trans men who look like beasts. I mean, they really do. They're like men compete against women. Like, I can't wait to see how that goes down because it's not going to go well for their vision. Trans men will absolutely win hands down against cis women with estrogen in their system. It's just that simple. So people are just pretty, in this day and age, people are just pretty damn stupid. However, so that was my first little topic I wanted to talk about, and that's definitely something I've been wanting to chat about. But I'm not sure how I feel about the sports thing. I'm not 100% sure how I feel, but I do feel that it's more fair to have trans people compete as the gender that they choose than it would be fair to have people to compete against the gender that they were assigned with at birth, even though they've been on hormones for, say, 3 years. I think that's the medical limit to be able to compete in sports. You have to be on that hormone therapy for at least 3 years, and they test your levels, so on and so forth. Anyway, so the other subject I wanted to discuss is, just how many trans people, or non-binary or trans people, have come out in the last, 5 years. So I was talking about this with someone, and I was saying, I feel like I was missing for 5 years. I feel like I was asleep in a coma and woke up, and suddenly everybody's either a woman or everybody's either non-binary. And I find it quite entertaining. But I find it interesting, and I'm not 100% sure where I stand on the subject. Non-binary is I've had difficulty understanding in the past, but I see it more as just androgynous. However, there is medical, things, people get medical stuff to get this stuff done. They get surgeries, like if you're non-binary and you were born female, like a lot of people get their breasts removed, but still identify as non-binary. And so, for example, I like to work out. One of my fitness idols right now is a very masculine woman. I mean, she's very buff and very intense. And so, for me, like a lot of people, talk about my voice or talk about, wanting to reduce muscle and so on and so forth. I'm not interested in any of that. I actually like the idea of having muscle as a woman and actually being quite big and quite strong, and that's something that I'm working towards. As far as like my workout regimen, let me see, I can get a picture of this girl. Her name's Natasha Hai she's from Canada, she's 26. But anyway, so this is her, we'll just show a picture. Yeah, that's her. She's pretty buff, she's huge. And that's her on Instagram. And I follow her, and I'm actually really inspired by some of her workout stuff and just how buff she is. So for me, it's would that make me kind of non-binary if I like being a buff woman? I'm not sure. No, I don't think it does. So what exactly is the definition of non-binary? Is it just something you identify as? I've just noticed a lot of people have all been popping up. And then there's also a lot of, we all have dysphoria, we all have hard times, but there is no denying at this point, and this is going to offend a lot of trans people, that there is a lot of instability when it comes to, there's a lot of unstable trans people at the end of the day. There's a lot, and there's a lot more trans people, and I'm not sure if it's just unstable because that they're suffering from dysphoria and so on and so forth, or they're suffering from life being hard and people not accepting them, and everyone's different. It's all about perspective and so on and so forth. So for me, I remember when I first transitioned, I had a hard time. I lost my job, and it was very difficult. I lost all my friends, and men were using me for sex, and they found it quite entertaining. And I was just seeking approval, and I was very damaged after that, because you just want people to accept you for who you are, and it's quite obvious that a lot of people just are not. So whereas now in my life, I have a fantastic job, I have a great house, and I have good friends that I assume, care about me and respect my gender, and what I identify as. But every now and then, sometimes someone will surprise me and they'll say something. I'm like, that's pretty bad. But as far as like everybody being trans now, I just feel like it's undeniable to say that there is a lot of unstable trans people. A very large percentage are very unstable, with or without surgery, passing or not passing, being accepted by society or not being accepted by society. There's a lot of unstable trans people, and I just wonder where it comes from. It's like something I think about often, because I feel like I'm pretty stable. Of course, I suffer dysphoria, and every now and then I get insecure, but I've never been more stable in my whole life. But I watch trans people like It's Ma'am, that video at the GameStop transgender woman. And that was really intense to watch. It was actually very difficult to watch for me because I would have reacted the same way as the people there. I wouldn't have filmed it, but, there's just a lot of people. Like, I have a couple of transgender clients that I do their hair, and they're two trans women. And they really, one of them has put a good bit of effort into their transition. The other one just really looks like a guy. Like, it's awful because it sounds transphobic, even from a trans person. But this person, there's no way, unless they're going to tell you, that you're going to know that they're transgender or identify as a woman. There's no way you're going to know unless they tell you. And for me, I do believe you have to put the work in, and that's going to be controversial. I feel like you should put the work in, and you should, I know society standards isn't something we should live up to, but you can't just be transgender. Like, you can't just say, oh, well, I'm trans and I'm, now a woman. You actually have to put the work in and some effort, into, that. And so for me, it's, I have a difficult time where everybody's non-binary and everybody's just trans now, and it's just, it's not as easy as I think people think it is, and it's not as common as it is. And so I feel like a lot of people are jumping into it as an exploration thing, which is just fine. But in today's age, I think that being trans is authentically trans. I don't think it's as common as it seems right now, because I just feel like everybody's fucking non-binary and everyone's trans now. And I'm like, well, how is this happening? Like, there's so many people. Everyone's polyamorous and everybody's non-binary and everybody's just, it's a big mess. So I don't know if I'm just getting older and I'm getting a little more conservative as I get older. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, so that's some thoughts on that. You guys can give me your thoughts, or you can call me transphobic, you can do whatever you want. But to me, I felt like if something needed to be said, and these two trans people, I think I was going into that, my two clients of mine, I had to have them come in on days that no one else is there. And the reason why is because they would say things that were like teenage girls, and I get it, but these are like 50-year-old trans women, and they would say things like, oh, my nipples are just so sensitive. And there were days during the week where we had like an elderly woman or an elderly man sitting right next to them, and they're like, yeah, they're just so sensitive. And one was like, yeah, my hips are getting so big that men can't help but hit on me. And I'm like, can we just like act like adults here? Like, can we just mature to a certain level, and these two were engaged after 2 weeks of knowing each other, and now one lives on one side of the country, the other one lives on the other, and the reason why they're not together is because their other partners don't like each other. It's a huge mess, and I just feel like this is something that's become quite common in the trans community, is there's a lot of instability with mentality. Like, people are all over the damn place, and so yeah, I'm not sure if it's just me getting more conservative or if times are changing. So at the end of the day, put the work into your transition. Like, transitioning isn't easy. It's not something you can just tell people you are. You actually have to put the effort into it. And it's not just fashion. It's actually, putting forth the effort to be what you identify as. You can't just say you're non-binary. You can't do it, and the non-binary thing is very difficult for me to understand, but I would consider myself possibly non-binary if I like having huge muscles and I like working out, and stuff like that. I'm never changing my voice. Like, someone commented on my last videos, like, why is it you can always tell the trannies by their voice? And I'm like, I like my voice. I like exactly how it sounds. It doesn't bother me. It's not even a dysphoria for me. And it bothers other people more, I guess, But at the end of the day, you have to put the work in, and you have to, show that this is something serious, because being transgender is quite serious. It's not something that people just casually feel like doing like randomly, you know. It's yeah. So yeah, other than that, yeah, everything's good in life, and I just thought I'd ramble on about that. So I hope everyone's well. Let me know your thoughts on these two ideas. If you think transition should just be what you identify as, you don't have to put any work into it, you just identify. Or do you think it's something that's not as common as it is, authentically being transgender? I feel like it's too common now. I feel like these people, a lot of people really aren't, yeah. I feel like it's more of an idea for people. I think it's like I hate to say trend or fashionable. It's quite fashionable to be non-binary now. And if so, if the worst that comes out of it is that people start to maybe understand what it's like to be treated as someone who's different, then why not? It would be good for people, you know? So anyway, I hope everyone's well. Let me know what you think, and I will stay in touch. I'll try and make these videos more often. Anyway, you'll have a good one.